At one of Moscow's schools, an alumni reunion evening is about to begin. Two former classmates stand on the porch, greeting everyone who arrives. There is no shortage of snide remarks, since everyone has changed over the years, and not always for the better. Meanwhile, the recognized class heartthrob, Ignatiev, has become even more attractive, which the girlfriends immediately notice. He talks about his business when one of them suddenly runs toward an awkward, chubby guy she calls Cal. He heads inside the school, while the heartthrob asks that they spare the doofus today, feeling sorry for him. After all, he was ridiculed throughout his school years. But then another classmate distracts him. They hug, and the four of them enter the school building where the banquet is taking place. The classmates want to know how Cal's life has turned out, but he asks them not to call him by his childish nickname, explaining that his name is Ivan, he works in IT, and he's married to a girl they all know. They start listing the names of those who didn't show up, and just as they give up, in walks the former school queen, Lena, though everyone thought she had long since moved to America and become a famous model. Lena heads to the table and asks for the seat next to her husband to be cleared. She promptly kisses Vanya, which stuns everyone present, and then proceeds to greet everyone around them. Later, the couple step onto the dance floor, and all the men in the hall can't hide their confusion at how a woman so gorgeous could end up married to such a klutz. Vanya steps away to the restroom, and Lena is approached by her former classmates. She explains that she returned to Russia and married Vanya, and that she's very happy with him. The guys laugh, thinking it's a prank and that Vanya paid her, but Lena responds rather sharply, explaining that none of them could ever earn her attention because, as men, they don't even come close to her husband. Offended, the guys confront Vanya in the corridor, wanting payback for Lena's insults. Vanya begs them not to hurt him, but Lena arrives and promptly tosses the three big guys aside like ragdolls. The story then flashes back 2 months earlier when Vanya brings home the head of an experimental robot, which he has modeled after the classmate he'd secretly loved throughout all their school years. He explains to the head that it must accompany him to the reunion with classmates he hasn't seen for 17 years and introduce itself as his wife. He laments that his classmates twisted his surname, Kalinin, into the offensive nickname Cal, which in Russian means turd. Just then, a robo-dog that also lives with him distracts Vanya, promising to get the head a top-notch body, since androids are being developed in his lab right now. Later, on his way out of the lab, a security guard notices part of a robot in his car, but Vanya cracks a joke, and the guard lets him pass. Back home, Vanya shows Lena a unisex body frame. He's already made the arms feminine and plans to finish the rest along the way. Vanya attaches the head to the body and asks the robot to move its arms, then suggests it try doing something on its own. The robot smashes a wall and hurls a knife straight into it. Confused by its behavior, Vanya checks the device's back panel and realizes he accidentally stole the Oprichnik model, developed for military purposes and so-called in honor of Ivan the Terrible's fearsome special guard. If he's caught, he'll face a long prison sentence. Later, Lena learns how to apply makeup, which thrills Vanya. The robot has to remind him that she isn't actually a woman, but that's exactly what Vanya plans to fix, as he's brought her a set of prosthetic breasts and is ready to install them. Now, Vanya and Lena are forced to flee the school before the men they beat up can call the police. Granted, Lena can run at 50 kilometers per hour and is willing to carry Vanya in her arms, but he finds that unnecessary. He asked her to throw on a fur coat because even though her nanomaterial can withstand temperatures from plus 50 to minus 50 degrees Celsius, not everyone needs to know that. However, near the school, they almost get hit by a car and a policeman stops them. He asks to see their documents, and upon learning Lena has none, requests that they both come to the station. The robot knocks him out with a single punch, then smashes the car where his partner is sitting. A frightened Vanya begs Lena not to act like that, but she cites information from the internet about corrupt policemen. Vanya realizes they might not make it to the lab and takes Lena back home. Later, he gets ready for bed and invites Lena to join him. She declines since she doesn't need to sleep. Disappointed, Vanya suggests she tidy up the apartment. Lena offers to help him fall asleep and simply powers him off. When Vanya wakes up, he doesn't recognize his place. It's completely cleaned and polished. But as the two prepare to leave for the lab, Ivan's parents walk in. They're overjoyed to see such a beautiful woman next to their son, and she introduces herself as Vanya's wife. Stunned, the parents invite the couple to celebrate the occasion at a restaurant, where Lena surprises them even more by announcing that she doesn't have a stomach. Vanya has to come up with excuses. He leads Lena to the restroom and asks her to act more normally. There, a man tries to interrupt them. Annoyed, they're in his way, and Lena knocks him out. Eventually, Vanya decides to come up with a story to explain their impending divorce. For now, he asks the robot to keep his parents occupied while he goes to the lab to cover his tracks, since it's unlikely they can hush this up quickly. He also asks her to create a believable excuse for his absence. Later, Lena drives the couple in a car, telling them that Vanya is currently in the Kremlin receiving an award from the president in a closed-door ceremony. The father is overjoyed, having always believed in his son's abilities. Meanwhile, Vanya is met by a security guard who informs him there's a search underway at the lab. At the same time, Vanya's father starts talking about the weather, and Lena provides the forecast, including the relative humidity. Meanwhile, the head of security, Nestorov, stops Vanya and tells him that someone broke into the lab overnight and the prototype of a combat robot disappeared from the storage area. He suspects foreign spies. Vanya slips up by suggesting she might have run away on her own, surprising Nestorov. But Vanya quickly recovers, referring to the robot as a mere machine. Meanwhile, Lena and Vanya's parents stroll through the park. His mother admits they never expected him to get married, and his father wants to know how Vanya managed to land such a woman. Lena straightforwardly says she's a military robot that Vanya stole from Skolkovo, fitted with the face of his former classmate, and then ordered to obey him. His parents burst out laughing at what they assume is a great joke, but just then, a thug nearby snatches the girl's bag and runs off. Lena steps in his path and effortlessly recovers the bag. The robber stabs her in the stomach, but the knife breaks, and he goes down from her counterattack. The robot explains to her parents that she's got extremely well-developed abs. Meanwhile, at the lab, Nestorov asks Vanya to bring up the missing robot's face on screen. Vanya distracts him by pointing to a janitor, then alters the program's configuration, causing the face to change. The head of security then asks Vanya to insert the security key into the computer to track the machine's location, as a prototype more expensive than a spaceship couldn't possibly be left unmonitored. After seeing the robot's location, the guards drive off. Vanya calls Lena and asks her to hide in a shopping center where he'll meet her. Meeting in the parking lot, Vanya tries to figure out exactly where the tracking device is embedded, kneeling in front of the robot to examine her. Spotting a guard, Lena pretends they're engaging in a romantic tryst, embarrassing him so much that he leaves. Lena suggests that the beacon might be inside her head. They head to the tools department, but discover Vanya has no money, so they can't buy the screwdriver they need. Lena suggests she show the salesman her kitty. The guy, stunned by the idea, pulls out a camera, promising to give them the tool for free. Lena immediately starts purring and licking her hands. Outraged at being tricked, the salesman protests, only to be slammed into the wall. The pair leave with the screwdriver. They go to the restroom, where Lena kneels down and Vanya opens a panel in her ear, discovering the bug. They react so excitedly that the guard who walks in mistakes their outburst for signs of intimate activity. Recognizing them as the same couple from the parking lot, he asks Vanya to teach him how to please women. The pair leave the restroom and run into Nestorov and his men, who are surprised to find Vanya there. They grab him, prompting Lena to jump into the fight and scatter the guards. They make a run for it, with Lena somehow managing to change into new clothes and more suitable shoes along the way. As they exit the parking area, the police stop them. Vanya begs Lena not to kill anyone but to act like the Terminator. The robot quickly replays the film in her head and approaches the officers. They open fire, but the bullets bounce off her. She injures the officers and they drive away. On the way, Vanya notices a bullet stuck to Lena's cheek. She brushes it off and her skin immediately regenerates. Later, they stop to discuss what happened. Vanya asks the robot to act more naturally, so she activates her camouflage mode and instantly changes her appearance. He suggests they surrender, but Lena insists that Russians never surrender. That's when Vanya remembers his supervisor, Pavel, who's always been kind to him. They decide to go see him, but have no money for gas. Lena takes Vanya to an underground club that hosts illegal no-rules fights, explaining that she follows the club's channel. She enters a match against the club's champion and easily defeats her. Later, they receive their prize money, but Lena asks for help obtaining forged documents and returns the cash. They sneak into Pavel's house, and Vanya tells him everything he's done with the military robot. Pavel is astounded that Lena can respond to conversation and even joke around. He explains that Nestorov has discovered a spy in the lab, so explaining everything will be no simple task. Moreover, various special services are hunting this model, meaning Vanya actually thwarted an attempt to steal it. Pavel asks them to lie low while he tries to resolve the issue. They leave, but the police spot them and begin a chase. They manage to evade capture several times but eventually fall into a trap. Lena steps out of the car and approaches the vehicles blocking the street. Just as she's about to scatter them, Nestorov and his men move in and ensnare the robot with a special power net. They're placed in a van and taken to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. While Nesterov orders a crate prepared for transport, Vanya confesses to Lena that she's dear to him not as a robot but as a beloved woman. She doesn't believe him and advises him to think of himself. At that moment, Nesterov guns down his own men, drags Vanya outside, hands him a rifle, and confesses that he made up the spy story in order to sell the robot. He needed a fall guy for the theft and betrayal, and Vanya turned up at just the right time. As he says this, Nesterov activates a mine that will blow everything up, covering up the missing android. He's about to shoot Ivan when one of the guards regains consciousness and fires at Nesterov, distracting him. Lena orders Ivan to run, and he slips out through the gate. Nesterov hijacks a vehicle with Lena inside. Vanya returns, finds the keys to his handcuffs, frees himself, and escapes just before a massive explosion. Later, he remembers the No Rules Fighting channel and sends a message there. Lena replies, explaining that Nesterov took her to a helicopter pad where a buyer is waiting. Vanya promises to come for her, although the android suggests calling the police. But he realizes that by the time he explains everything, they'll have already taken her away. Meanwhile, Lena is loaded onto the buyer's helicopter. Nesterov is given a folder with new documents and accounts, though Lena warns him he doesn't have long to live since no one wants witnesses. Just then, Vanya arrives brandishing a pistol. Nesterov laughs at him, but Lena advises Vanya to aim lower. He pulls the trigger and hits the control panel for the electronic net, freeing the android. Nesterov tries to flee while Lena dispatches the buyer's guards. She knocks the traitor off his feet, then takes out the buyer. Vanya kisses Lena, but it has no effect on her. Still, she appreciates that he came for her. The pair leave together. Sometime later, Vanya's boss thanks him for his heroism, and Vanya asks for permission to work on improving Lena. The robo-dog adds its own plea, and Pavel agrees. First, though, they go to Vanya's parents and confess they tricked them, clarifying that they're really just friends. The father remains convinced there's love between them. Lena says that Vanya is a true hero and will definitely find his real love. It's a hybrid of comedy, sci-fi, and action. The plot is fairly cliched, but at least the jokes aren't too vulgar. Overall, it's the kind of movie you'd only watch once.